friggin' dragon. You can see how this ends, right? You can't run from fate. But you should have tried.
So about a year ago, I reviewed Gobi's flagship TV Color Sync Light Kit, which featured the InVisual dual camera based system. And about 7 months ago, as from the recording of this video, I reviewed Lightme's Fantasy 3 HDMI 2.1 Sync Box. Now I've linked those videos down in the description in case you'd like to go back and check those out, because this video today is going to serve as a follow-up to those previous product offerings, as Gobi and Lightme have followed up on those releases with new product models. Most recently, Gobi dropped their latest camera-based TV light kit that they're calling the T3 Lite, and Lightme has quietly released the Fantasy 3 HDMI 2.1 Pro TV Sync Box, which now addresses many of the drawbacks that the standard model suffered from, such as lack of VRR and ALLM support. Now, being that Gobi's camera-based systems sync colors by external means, technical perks like VRR and ALLM are also supported on that backlight as well. So if you're a TV smart light enthusiast that's after these technicalities for gaming, yes, each of these offerings can accommodate it, but there are definitely some fine print granular details that you have to be aware of in the consideration for either of these products, which we'll get into. But before we jump in, I want to preface things in saying that this video is not intended to serve as a direct one-to-one comparison or shootout between the T3 and the Fantasy Pro, because these devices use vastly different technology, and if you're familiar in any way with these types of products, you'll know that internal-based systems in general tend to have more accuracy and lower latency. But there are major pros and cons for both of these devices, even though they both share the same end game, which is to mimic the color being displayed on your TV with the LED backlight, in order to provide a heightened sense of immersion for TV shows, movies, gaming, etc. Let's kick things off with the T3, with taking a closer look at the evolution of the Gobi TV camera over the past 3 generations. On the far left, we have the original A6199 model, which was designed to mount on top and bottom of TVs using 3M adhesive. On the right, we have the T2 dual camera, which ditches the adhesive for an adjustable mount system. And with the dual camera design, each lens tracks half of the screen independently, so that pixel information can be gathered twice as fast. And finally, we come to the T3 in the middle, that has a much more sleek and lightweight design as compared to the others. Now, even though the T3 camera adopts a similar retractable design as with the T2, as you can see, it only utilizes a single camera to gather information. Still, the T3 actually has a few technical improvements over the T2, such as support for matter, and it also has an improved fisheye corrective lens, which is geared towards better minimizing edge distortion of the display. Now, here's a snapshot of the evolution of the backlight itself across 3 generations, where we have the T1 on the bottom, T2 in the middle, and the T3 on the very top. It is a bit of a bummer that the T3 doesn't feature 60 beads per meter as with T2, but Gobi is emphasizing that this is the light entry-level version of the T3, not the T3 flagship, which is the reason it retails for roughly $50 less, and it has less software features such as the smooth and the vivid modes with the T2. However, despite this model's positioning as an entry-level product, there's a couple of things going on under the hood that I really wish the T2 had, such as surface glare reduction to minimize reflections from lighter furniture and objects, which can hinder performance. And of course, the T3 has that RGB-IC-W tech, which means that the light strip has a dedicated white chip, so you'll get a lot less of that artificial bluish tinge in place of white, as with the standard RGB-IC on the T2. As you can see here in this example on Forspoken, that dedicated white chip helps to provide a more natural representation of the rock in the treasure chest. The T3 also supports a max of 7 separately sold devices versus 5 for the T2, such as the new and improved Hexa Ultra Light panels, which come in both Meteor Gray and Lunar White. Each panel features 33 integrated IC chips, and the result is astonishing. It essentially combines the Hexa 3D panels in the Gobi Y lights so that you can have the best of both worlds. Anyway, getting back to the T3 Lite, I like this model and the direction Gobi is going with the dedicated white chip. I hope that becomes the standard moving forward. But I have some gripes. The first is that the camera cannot be bottom calibrated as of the recording of this video. The T2 also, technically, is not intended to be bottom mounted, but the T2 calibration settings does allow for workarounds. But with the T3, the center calibration dot is fixed and can only be adjusted from left to right. My second gripe for the T3 is that it needs some software fine-tuning as far as saturation and white balance goes. I've done a lot of tweaking over the past few weeks inside the app settings, but I haven't been able to quite achieve the consistency that I have on the T2. But as you can see here, the dedicated white chips does shoulder a lot of the inaccuracies with previous models. But nevertheless, I'm really looking forward to the T3 flagship model if that's what they end up calling it. I'd love a dual camera system with 60 beats per meter minimum with dedicated white chips. And I don't want to have to jump through hoops in order to have a bottom mount setup. Switching gears to Lightme's HDMI 2.1 Pro model. And just to rehash for those less familiar, Lightme was actually first to market with their HDMI 2.1 sync box that allows for gaming at a 4K resolution while maintaining a 120Hz refresh rate. However, the first release suffered from three major problems. Number one, which was less expected, is that when HDR was active, the backlight interpreted red colors as orange, which threw off all other colors that are derived from it, browns, yellows, etc. Secondly, VRR was 100% unsupported. And thirdly, ALLM was technically supported, but on the Series X, it caused the backlight colors to become very dull and washed out. Well, the good news is that with the new Fantasy 3 Pro model, as advertised, you can indeed game on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X at a 4K resolution with VRR and ALLM enabled. And on top of that, having HDR active no longer affects the backlight's ability to represent red accurately, which means that all other colors that require it are on point as well. And it's just a beautiful thing to see and experience. We still have the very same settings at our disposal with video acting as low, recreation medium, and game high reaction levels for the entire light strip, while degree of diffusion allows for fine-tuning of how acute the light reaction will be across the dedicated IC areas. However, I wish that I could tell you guys that my experience with gaming with the Fantasy Pro has been seamless and carefree over the last few weeks, because unfortunately, it hasn't. You see, when launching newer AAA games that support 4K at 120 with VRR active, the image signal on occasion goes black, as it normally does momentarily as VRR initiates. But the problem is, sometimes that image never comes back. As with this example here for Forza, you can see that the game is running in the background and the backlight is reacting to the Forza scene intro, but all I'm seeing right now is my LG default gallery images, which pops up when a signal is lost. This happens on occasion with VRR active when launching into certain games or even closing them out. And the only way to consistently bring the picture back is to unplug the AC power cable from the sync box, wait for about 5 to 10 seconds, plug it back in, and wait for the box to reset. Needless to say, this can be a hassle because you don't want to have to get up from your couch to perform this action time and time again. I've actually debated putting the sync box on a smart Wi-Fi switch to kill the power by voice whenever this happens. But realistically, this isn't something that users should have to wrestle with when upgrading to the Pro model or picking this model over the standard version. Because as it stands now, the most consistent benefit of the Pro model over the original for me has been ALLM and HDR support. I've had days when the image is lost more frequently than others, in which case I'll usually just shut off VRR on the PS5 and the Series X altogether. But in many ways, that sort of defeats the purpose of the Pro model outside of, again, the improved HDR and the ALLM performance. I've tried a number of high-quality HDMI 2.1 cables of various lengths in my quest to correct this to no avail. I've tried adjusting color depth, disabling Dolby Vision and ALLM momentarily, etc. But this didn't stop that occasional image loss when launching and closing out certain games. I'll update you guys if Lightme is able to make some strides in this department on the software side. And it's possible that your mileage may vary, but I can only speak to my experience. So it's important that I call this out here and now because I feel that I have a responsibility to do that. But this is one of the major reasons many users gravitate to the simplicity of a camera-based system, in spite of the fact that they tend to have less accuracy, more latency, and are susceptible to performance drops from external light sources. They're plug and play by nature, and they work with any and every video or audio source device that you can throw at it, including smart TV apps. As we're closing in now on 7 years since the HDMI 2.1 standard was introduced, I'm really hoping that companies in the smart lighting sector can get HDMI 2.1 sync boxes to a place where performance is more consistent and reliable from day to day with VRR enabled. That seems to be the major hurdle here, because the last thing we need is to get 2.1 perfect just before the next standard is introduced and more widely adopted, a problem that external-based systems will never have. For Lightme's Fantasy Box specifically, I'd also like to see adjustment options added into the app to allow for controlling individual IC segments and to adjust saturation, which is still on the low end as compared to Gobi's HDMI 2.0 sync box that I boosted to hit 4K at 120 locked. Video link below. Before you jet, if you're currently using dynamic lighting to sync up with your TV, let me know the specific product model and the brand. There are some new players in the space, so I'm interested to learn about your specific experiences. If you have any follow-ups, make sure to drop me a comment down below. And as always, thanks for watching and supporting the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one.